Gervonta Tank Davis says that he was nervous before the Ryan Garcia fight. Mad respect to Gervonta, because I was honestly surprised he would admit something like this. I think that's, you know, a sign of mutual respect between him and Ryan Garcia. Tank said that he was nervous when his brother came into the locker room, obviously, because you get to send one representative to watch your opponent wrap their hands, and Ryan Garcia sent his brother, and his brother was saying, you know, you're gonna feel it, and Tank said that he was getting a little bit nervous hearing all that. So it is interesting to see. A lot of respect to Tank for even admitting that. That just shows how confident he actually is as a fighter, how secure he is to admit something like that. But, you know, it's cool to see that, because now we know Tank is human. You know, sometimes we see Tank, we're like, how does he continue to perform like that? I think that Tank does his best work, and he said this before, but Tank believes he does his best work when his back is against the wall, and I honestly believe it, because he said he was nervous for that Ryan Garcia fight because he had seen all the clips. Obviously, Ryan Garcia knocks out a lot of people, and rarely do fighters make it 12 rounds with them, and usually when they do, it's a boring fight. So for Tank to do what he did, you guys know I'm a little bit of a critic on Tank when I talk about, you know, the rehydration clause and the catch weight, but I also understand that Tank is a significantly smaller guy than Ryan Garcia is, and especially with what Ryan Garcia did to Devin Haney, I feel like physical size is a big factor. But I only say that I'm only critical of Tank for putting that rehydration clause in the catch weight, because I really do think that he could probably beat Ryan even without that stuff, because with the catch weight and the rehydration clause, people obviously have that as an excuse for why Ryan Garcia didn't win. And do I think Ryan Garcia could maybe beat Tank? Maybe. It's possible. It's possible, you know, but especially after that Devin fight. But I still think that Tank is just on another level. And Tank even said, like, if Ryan Garcia was a little bit more patient, if he waited it out and executed the game plan, then maybe he could have landed something on me. That's what Tank said, but he got a little anxious. He said, let's fight right away. Obviously, you guys saw Tank being very patient, as he always is in the early on rounds, and then he allowed Ryan Garcia to be the aggressor, where in that fight, both of these guys are really good counter punchers. So it was honestly going to be, you know, when there's two counter punchers, the story of the fight is always going to be who's going to be the one to make the first mistake. That's how it is. When you have two counter punchers, stylistically, that's always the thing that happens. Even with the counter puncher and a come forward fighter, the counter puncher is always waiting for the aggressor to make a mistake, and the aggressor is waiting for the counter puncher to take their eyes off the ball, and that's when they typically attack. So boxing's all about, you know, a chess match, and then who makes the first mistake, especially when it's at that elite level. And Ryan Garcia obviously said he didn't have it in him to just stay there and jab Tank. He wanted to fight. He wanted to knock out Tank, and Tank even said it, you know, he was nervous. So Ryan Garcia definitely is an elite fighter, in my opinion. I'm not saying he's the best boxer in the world when it comes to hitting and not getting hit. He's not the slickest fighter in the world, but he can fight. Like, there's no doubt about that. So that just makes it even cooler. I feel like even though we just saw Tank and Ryan, it was a while ago. We saw that fight back in April of 2023. It's been more than a year since we've seen Tank in the ring, but to hear even now that he was a little bit nervous makes it interesting, you know, like to hear that a guy like Tank gets nerves. It was something that I seem surprised about. I feel like I'm so used to seeing Tank just be composed, and he's always waiting. I guess when he gets into that ring, it's a different mode. So he got comfortable. Ryan Garcia got comfortable, and then Tank obviously caught him in the second round, and then ultimately stopped him with that nasty body shot. And apparently Ryan Garcia had an injury going into it, but at the end of the day, I always say that, you know, fighters are never 100% whenever they get in the ring. So not trying to make excuses for Ryan Garcia because he lost, but if that was an injury, and then that on top of the catch weight and the rehydration clause, I'm just trying to be real here. You know, Tank still deserves credit for that win, but man, would I love to see a rematch. I think a rematch is probably the biggest fight in boxing, because you guys got to think about it. 1.2 million pay-per-view buys. They were able to do that, and they weren't the biggest fight in boxing. The biggest fight in boxing was supposed to be Spence versus Crawford. They ended up doing, what, 600, 700,000 pay-per-view buys? And then guys like Ryan Garcia and Tank that aren't or weren't champions at 35. It was a catchweight fight. No belts were on the line, and they were able to make a spectacle of it because these guys are so popular. It wasn't even a title fight, but Tank and Ryan were able to do 1.2 million pay-per-view buys. That just goes to show how little belts matter to the public. You know, people outside of the sport of boxing don't know who's the IBF, WBC, WBA champ of the world. They don't know that stuff. So obviously when you have a guy like Ryan Garcia who's basically reached the level of celebrity and superstardom that a lot of fighters in the sport of boxing may never reach, and then you have a guy like Tank who's basically if not as popular right there with Ryan, and then they fight, obviously you're going to get big numbers. So imagine what a rematch would do. That's why I think a rematch is so big between Ryan Garcia and Devin. Between Ryan Garcia and Tank, and a Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia rematch as well, because with the positive test from Ryan Garcia for Osterine, that makes it a little bit more interesting, because you take a look back at that fight and you say, man, Devin bagged rounds 2 to 5. If let's say Ryan Garcia's performance enhancement drug, you know, that really did play a role, it played a strong role, then who's to say that Devin can't beat Ryan Garcia easily in another fight? You know, let's say that Devin has the right game plan going into that. Who knows? He might be able to outbox Ryan Garcia for 12 rounds. But, you know, it's the same circumstances that I gave before their first fight. I was saying that, you know, if Devin can stay away from that left hook, if he can swim without getting wet for 12 rounds, that's the big ifs in the sport of boxing. Because Devin Haney, I know he possesses all the skills when it comes to boxing, but it's just the power. You know, I always say that if you don't have the power to keep your opponent off you, when you run into a big puncher, it's going to be very difficult to deal with that kind of style of fighting, because a lot of guys are going to force you to fight. Floyd Mayweather says it best. Some guys, they're just going to force you to fight, and you're going to have to find a way to beat them. Floyd has done that. You know, he's been able to protect himself at all times and never really get knocked out. You know, never lost, never got dropped. He's gotten dropped before, but he's never really been out, you know, hurt to the point where it affected the scorecards. You know, Floyd knows that you only have to win 7 rounds. That's something that Devin Haney has to understand. If you got to make it a boring fight, make it a boring fight. I just think that the power really did have an impact on him, so it wasn't that easy. So, you know, I still like Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia, that rematch, but I still don't think it's as big as Tank and Ryan Part 2. I think Tank and Ryan is the mega fight still. You know, even though it happened the first time, everyone's still talking about the rehydration clause and the catch weight. And I think this time, a catch weight is fine, but the rehydration clause is where everybody kind of discredits Tank for that fight, saying that, you know, you beat Ryan Garcia when he was weak, because all the photos come out of Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia and then Tank versus Ryan Garcia, and you can clearly see the difference in Ryan Garcia's physique. Maybe a little bit not as shredded, but definitely, you know, healthier looking in the face. You know, he looks very gaunt against Tank Davis, and you know, you don't notice it at the time because you're literally just watching the fight. But when you look back at it after watching what Ryan Garcia did to Devin Haney, and you compare the two versions of Ryan Garcia, the version of Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney versus Tank, that's a very interesting and scary fight for Tank, honestly, because he's so much bigger physically. So, you know, you can't, you know, I used to be more critical of Tank for the rehydration clause, but now I'm a little bit like, yeah, it makes sense, because Ryan's just so, he really is so much bigger. Because I always said that Devin was significantly bigger than Tank, which he is, but Ryan made Devin look small when they fought. So I now kind of understand why Tank put that rehydration clause, because Ryan Garcia is so big. He also did it against Mario Barrios, so I'm starting to understand a little bit more. But, you know, there are always going to be those fans talking about how Ryan Garcia went into that fight drained and depleted because he had to deal with that 136-pound catch weight, and on top of that, the rehydration clause for 10 pounds, Ryan couldn't rehydrate and eat the way he wanted to even after the weigh-in. Usually all fighters, they wait to make the weigh-in, and then as soon as the weigh-in's done, they always call that the first fight, winning the fight on the scales, and then they can eat properly. Ryan Garcia couldn't do that. So, like, taking that into account, I can't, I give credit to Tank for winning the fight, but real boxing fans know the stipulations and conditions under which that contract was signed, and everybody knows that Ryan Garcia wasn't the best version of himself against Tank. I'm not saying that Tank doesn't beat him in a rematch. I still favor Tank in a rematch, but if we're all going to be real here, you know, the real boxing fans know that a catchweight and a rehydration clause, that wasn't the best version of Ryan. That was the weakest version of Ryan, and that's just facts. But to hear Tank admit that he was nervous against Ryan Garcia, I give respect to that, because that's showing that, like, you saw the threat of Ryan Garcia in that fight. And we know that Ryan Garcia, especially after what he did to Devin, that he's a dangerous fighter. He's going to continue to be a dangerous fighter. But let me know in the comments what you guys think about Tank saying that he was nervous before the Ryan Garcia fight. I respect it. That's cool. And it surprised me that he said it. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.
That's going to do it for another NASFight Media video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your boy, Matt Nabong, with another video. Hope you guys enjoyed it all. Thank you guys for the constant support. Salute to y'all always. It's been your boy.